Hello, and welcome to our series, Conversations on Zionism, Reclaiming the Narrative. I'm Russell Robinson, Chief Executive Officer of Jewish National Fund USA. The time has come to be the voice of what Zionism really is. We're exposing the beautiful and diverse facets and facts of Zionism. Join me on this journey, together with Conversations on Zionism, Reclaiming the Narrative. This is Zionism. With us this evening, Virág Gulyás grows up in Hungary, a non-Jew, trades in her ballet shoes for a microphone, and has become the advocate for Israel, Zionism, and human rights. Virág, welcome to our show today. It's a fascinating opportunity. Hungarian born, not Jewish. You gave away your ballet shoes for a microphone. And you are the promoter of Israel. So what's your journey?
Wow, what an intro. Thank you so much for having me here. Indeed, I was a former professional ballet dancer. What's the story? I'm going to give you the shortcut. I'm very honestly coming from a rather anti-Semitic background. And here I always need to say, not the hateful one, but the ignorant one, who didn't know anything better than the Jewish jokes. And then 2011 or 12, I met an Israeli guy. I was really reluctant to even date him because, after all, he was Jewish, right? So, I mean, that's my starting point.
Right.
And then he took me to Israel very early on our relationship. Also, I didn't want to go there because there are so many Jews.
So before you went there,
yes,
because it's part of that narrative, you're dating somebody doesn't matter. You're taken to a country in which your perception is what?
You know, let's put timing on that, how I grew up. I grew up without social media. I was born in 85. Post-communist country, we have nothing else, just what you see in your proxy. My ballet school was in the middle of the Jewish district, but a very religious one. So my idea about Jews were that everyone is a Hasidic Jew. That's all I knew. And thinking back, you know, in my ballet school, I know now how many of my classmates are actually Jews, but I didn't know back then. Because it was not something like, hi, I'm this and this, and by the way, I'm Jewish.
Right.
And also, you didn't ask people, because then, you know, what are you doing? You're listing us again? So, you know, it has a very negative atmosphere on that sense. So I really didn't know anything.
What about the military?
Nothing.
Conflict?
But nothing. You know, it was not in my proxy. That's a psychological truism, right?
So you're that group of middle, and I say that, and it deals with what we're talking about in Zionism, that there's 25% of the people who love us, there's 25% of the people who hate us, and then there's that big group in the middle that may not like us or do like us or may like us but don't know. And that sort of was where you were at.
Absolutely. Again, it's like I was very much involved in my own surrounding, which was dance, art, and a little Hungarian politics, because after all, I saw my parents, you know, what they had to go through to give the freedom that I have today. But nothing about anything else. So it was pure ignorance. And again, I don't blame people like I was, because not everybody needs a major in Israel and Middle Eastern history, right? So you're only getting interested in something when you get a triggering point. So I got my triggering point through that Israeli guy that I dated.
You arrived in Israel. What did you think?
I arrived at Ben Gurion, and something already shifted there. And then I spent 2 weeks in Israel, from Rosh Hanikra to Elat. He took me everywhere. And we went to Shabbat dinners for very, you know, like very secular, very Orthodox people, even in Judah and Samaria. And I felt, okay, these Jewish people are not so bad after all. Like, you know, they are kind of nice. So the first couple of visits to Israel were very like, as a good tourist, you know, oh, I love the beach, everything is cool, people are nice. And then after, I think, my 4th or 5th trip, I started to get more involved. And by then, I started to follow the news regarding Israel. So I went there and I interviewed, you know, soldiers. First time I saw a soldier in front of me. Imagine, like, my European virginity really got lost there, you know, a person with a rifle, a person with a gun. These kids are actually going to fight for their own country, and they are younger than me. So it was a very waking up meeting for me with this idea of soldiers.
You're interviewing a soldier.
Yeah.
Here's this young 18-year-old What are some of the questions, answers, thoughts going in your head?
I first of all wanted to ask them how they feel about the obligatory military service. So then I went into in depth also, like how did they feel about the fact that every day they risk their lives? Have they lost a friend? How can they move on with life after they lose a friend? And by then, today I have met so many people, like I'm going to mention Noam Gershoni, for example, who was a pilot in Lebanon during the Lebanon War, and he crashed. And today he is in a wheelchair and sharing his story. And every time he finishes his speech, it's like that, I'm still a proud Jew. I'm always a proud Jew, And so this kind of system of values and what really you believe in life is very close to my background and where I'm coming from.
But see, that's so beautiful because I think that Zionism has those kind of values.
Absolutely.
That when you talk about a military, and that's why I think it was important for that conversation and that story, these are kids, some who, you're right, opted out to go into service for a wide variety of reasons. Some just out of fear, some out of political. Others that were there do not want to be there, would much rather be going to college, much rather be starting their lives. But are there to defend their country.
But they always say that, I didn't want to be there. Eventually, their best stories are from the army. Their best friends are from the army. The way they look at life is from the army. I mean, that book, Startup Nation, is a genius because it really shows, I don't know if you had the chance to read, how army prepares them for real life. It's also not for nothing that Israelis are so innovative because you learn to think strategically. You learn to think outside of the box. And in the Israeli army, it's like even though everybody has their position and they need to follow orders, they are allowed to make a decision when they need to be creative.
See, I think that is, again, such a powerful statement because I agree with you. The Israeli army is not an army just to defend the nation. It's an army to build a nation. In Israel, you're right. It is part of the cycle of life, and it's thought of the cycle of life and startup nation and or even medical technology advancements have come out of military research and development.
Absolutely.
So it's not research and development to figure out how to come up with something to destroy people. It's research and development that will end up saving people's lives.
Absolutely.
Now, you become this advocate for Zionism. It is not about being pro-Zionist because you're anti-something, but you are a Zionist or you believe in Israel, and yet you make that distinction, and I want you to explain why.
Look, when we say pro-Israel, I think we make a huge mistake, especially in the current atmosphere and climate, when everything that an Israeli person or like a Jewish person or anyone supporting Israel say is scrutinized. When you say pro-Israel, you are killing the Palestinian kids, so you're anti-Palestine. It doesn't say that. And also, if you are a proud Israeli or you believe in Zionism, you believe in the legitimacy of Israel, why do you need to say, I am pro? I don't need to say I'm pro-Hungarian, even though there is so much Hungarian hatred out there. I just try to be a decent Hungarian person and educate people why Hungary is actually not what you read in the New York Times. And the same applies for Zionism and Israel. I don't need to say I am pro-Israel. There is nothing to be pro about. Israel exists. That's what we are trying to uphold and explain to people why Israel has the legitimacy to exist. So.
Well, it's an interesting philosophy as well. I have an issue when people tell me that they defend Israel.
Why to defend?
Exactly.
You already put as the victimhood, mentally.
Right. It's a defense attorney is already defending against a crime.
Exactly. And I think, and I'm going to bring a parallelism again between Hungary and Israel, we are always on the defense. We never go ahead. Like, also, and I think that's why this whole Hasbara business, I understand why it was created, but I think it is bleeding from so many, ways, because you just cannot defend always what you are saying, because then you give a heads up like to the other person already, and then people are attacking you, and then you just say, oh, but no, please listen to me, please. No, sometimes you really need to be like, okay, Hamsa, I'm here, I'm saying this and this, and listen to me. So you need to be assertive, and that doesn't mean being aggressive. I don't believe in that, but you need to be assertive.
And proud.
Yeah, and proud, and that's so much. I think it's a generational problem, because we
taught our people to be participants in the competition, not winners.
Yes. But also, like, how do you say, like the psychology of this global village, that we are all equal, we are all human, which is true. We are all human. Equal, well, it's a question of, how do we define equal? But I see it in my generation and the younger generation especially. They don't have pride in things anymore. They just want to be universally accepted. We don't say anything. We don't stand up for anyone. I mean, we stand up for everyone, and hence we don't stand up for anyone, right? So that's pretty much the thing out there.
So what's our hashtag for the younger generation? At Jewish National Fund, we're committed to bring the Zionist conversation as a conversation. Its beauty, its different shapes, its looks, its feels. It is such a magnificent movement that has brought, in 73 years of democracy into the Middle East, it has brought Ethiopian Jews, the only country on the face of the earth that brought Black people in as citizens, not slaves.
Yeah.
There's a place called Israel.
Yeah, but nobody's interested in that, because Zionism is racism. Durban conference made the biggest harm ever, if you ask me. And you really need to reclaim Zionism. And I like that term that you guys coined here, because it cannot be that someone else defines what Zionism is. And they won. What a beautifully perverted thing what they did, right? Zionism, racism. It rhymes, it's catchy, it's easy to remember, it sounds very intellectual, So how do you come back from that? You need to go back to the basics. Number one, I know enough history that I know where Zionism is coming from, but don't start the speeches like 3,000 years ago, Hashem believed, and promised the land. Because this generation doesn't even know what happened 2 years ago, let alone 3,000 years ago, so you lose me. Zionism is nothing else that if me as a Hungarian person can have my own country, the Jewish people can have their own country. And whoever questions that, I would tell, okay, so give up your country, give up your citizenship, give up your sovereignty as a nation, give up your language, your culture, everything. You need to humanize Zionism, and you need to explain it in a very contemporary language so that everybody understands. And also terminology matters. When Jewish journalists write about West Bank, you're playing on that narrative. When you say settlers, regardless of your political affiliation, you cannot tell that the Jewish person is a settler in Israel. No, you can say, Judah and Samaria, otherwise also referred to as West Bank or something. But if you, as a Jewish person and journalists and influencers, sit on the same narrative that we are trying to fight, then we already lost. Like when people say Israel is colonizing. How did we even let that happen, let alone the word apartheid? Like, coming from a country where my great-grandfather was taken by the Gulag to the Gulag, overnight and nobody ever seen him. Or how my father was censored and he couldn't be a journalist because of the regime. My grandfather was a priest, hence my father was punished because the regime didn't like the priest. So I see it very, very differently. And when in America especially, let's focus on America, my age kids are trying to convince me that communism is a good thing. Half of my presentation, when it should be about Israel and Zionism, is about how communism is not a cool thing, The terminologies do matter. When politicians in America compare, the Holocaust and to the binary things in America, and they make a Holocaust appropriation of everything, I don't explain why Israel is not an apartheid state. Ask the other person, what do you mean under apartheid?
Right.
What does the word really mean to you? And then they need to answer. I mean, if they are not a Jew hater, and that's a test for me. If they say, apartheid is a segregation of people, or like, really dividing between black and white or something, then how does it apply to Israel?
Right.
The moment you cannot have this conversation, I'm sorry, you are a Jew hater. You are an anti-Semite. You either don't know or you don't want to accept it, but you are. So don't explain why Israel is the amazing country. No. We don't need to explain all the time, the cherry tomatoes and the startup nation and things. We fail on that end, I think. Explain the term that they are using. Colonization is, again, an exploitation of another country, right? When Belgians say that Israel is a colonizer, really? Belgians, like, really? The Netherlands, like, we can go on. It's just very funny.
So simplicity of message.
Yes.
Our right to an ancestral homeland,
Yes.
the same way that everybody else does. 2, when utilizing words, make them describe their own words. Don't
Yes.
defend your positiveness. Have them defend their evil that they're talking about, and don't get caught up into the cherry tomato conversation.
Exactly. You ask for a hashtag, right?
Yeah.
I work with a movement now, and we call it End Jew Hatred. Some people really hate this hashtag. Some people love it. Some people say, oh, you cannot say Jew hatred because it's so strong. I'm like, yeah, that's what we need. A very strong hashtag, a very strong provocative saying, Antisemitism is also so overused that people already forgot what it really means. But when you say Jew hater, it's like you are racist.
I like it.
There's no better gift to give or receive than one that can connect you with nature and your homeland. JNF has made it super easy for you to order your tree certificate online. Just go to jnf.org/trees, pick which special occasion it's for, whether a birth, bar mitzvah, just order your tree online and let's get planting. Every tree counts. As a memorial to a loved one, as a tribute for a special occasion, as a link to your heritage, as a link to the land of Israel, to help the environment and reduce your carbon footprint. Every tree counts.
You talk about evil, and you have a great belief that there's evil and then there's good, and that it's important that good fight evil. Tell us more.
Look, we all have our double sides, right? Every day we are fighting our own demons on a personal level. I have my evil side and I have my good side. It's every day I choose which one I pick and which one I'm augmenting and highlighting. That was actually what you mentioned from a speech that I gave here in Manhattan at a rally. And I believe that Jew hatred is not simply a Jewish issue, because it never stops with the Jews. And obviously that's not my big discovery as a sentence, that what starts with the Jews never stops with the Jews, but I really believe in that. And what we are seeing, and I don't know how politically correct I need to be here, but what we are seeing here is way more of an ideological war. I happen to, by God's grace, happened to survive 2 terrorist attacks that I was not killed, one in London and one in Brussels. Both were executed by Islamic jihadists. That's a fact. And that does not, or should not, ever in a common sense world equate me to an Islamophobic. That's a fact. So in today's world, even if you are not Jewish, but you stand up for the westernized modern values, you are attacked. Today, being a conservative person, in a conservative meaning, I believe in a sovereign state nation, for example, you become a target. If I sum up the labels put on me, I'm a white privileged girl, Eastern European, conservative, and a Zionist. Imagine how my inbox looks every day. So it cannot be that we achieved and we are arriving to a world where all these values and labels are making me a target. So if I'm at a Jewish rally, or even if I go to a Shabbat dinner, and someone wants to attack that Shabbat dinner, they're not going to ask me, how Jewish are you? Are you Jewish? No. You support the Jewish people, you're going to be shot down the same way. And remember also during the Holocaust, those people who helped the Jews were also taken. So it's very important.
So it's a very strong message that you either are evil or good. And I don't mean on the daily actions. I mean who you are as an individual. Because if you're good, if you really want to be good, you can't sit on the sidelines. people get labeled whether they want to be labeled or not.
Yeah.
So if you want to be silent, it doesn't help because they're not going to allow you to be silent.
Yes, you need to know yourself, what you are good at, what you're comfortable at. And we all have a role in bettering this world. I really believe in that. And, Jews definitely with the tikkun olam and things. But I really believe that sometimes you just better the world in a way that you ask your neighbor to come over for a Shabbat dinner, even if they are not Jewish, or especially if they are not Jewish. Imagine if you ask your neighbor to come over and you have a blast. That person is going to leave with a very different notion about Jews and then vis-a-vis Israel also.
So you made a great statement that we'll start closing at, called silence is violence. So elaborate more on that.
There has to be a tipping point when people realize that being silent is adding to the violence. For example, now in the US, Jew hatred, antisemitism is spiking. Jews are being attacked every day, physically, violently. And if you're still okay to just sit in your ivory tower and pretend it doesn't exist, then how the never again hashtag is actually mean? Does it mean anything? Or you just gonna, put something every January or every March, never again, and then we move on. But many, many people live in their ivory towers, and that's a problem. So never be a bystander.
You're a great hero. You're a great spokesperson for human beings, for movements of good. Those young people that are out there,
Mm-hmm.
they're part of that indifferent or non-knowledgeable. They're thinking about whether they should wear the Star of David or not the Star of David. I never fault anybody for lack of education, especially children or young people. It's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
What's your words to them? This is Zionist movement. This is an opportunity not to react or not to, and I think we have to do those. We have to do rallies. We have to do all those, but we have to be strong. So your words to them.
You really puts me at a pressureful situation, because if I would have a Jewish crowd in front of me, I would answer it differently. If I have a non-Jewish tending to Zionist, it's again a different message. If you
have a crowd of people that are between 22 and 30 years old,
yes,
and you don't know.
Okay, so my first message is, if you are Jewish, be a proud Jew. Because the moment you lose that, you are in trouble. And of course, everybody needs to play safe. So I'm not here, to tell you to ask for trouble. But we need to arrive to a situation where Jew hatred is having as strong of a consequence as racism. So if someone is attacking today a black person, you hear it everywhere. If someone is being attacked for being a Jew, you hear it in the echo chamber. That has to be changed. And for that, you need to share your experience. What do I mean by that? I know several Lower East Side Jewish businesses were attacked a couple of weeks ago. They don't go to the police, they don't go to the media because they are scared. If you are not going, how can we actually, face the reality and change the situation? When it comes to the young people, education, that's all I can say. I know it's such a cliche, but it cannot be that in the United States, only 12 states require any kind of Holocaust education. And there is a majority of youngsters out there who think Hitler is a cool person from history. It cannot be that in the name of free speech, a fifth grader can write an essay about Hitler being an excellent leader. Like, I understand that in the US you have this big hunger for freedom of speech, but people go to school to be educated and not have the freedom of speech at age 10, writing an essay about Hitler and glorifying Hitler. I know I'm not directly answering your question, but I think it's something that way smarter people than I am cannot really crack the code for that. I really believe in humanizing experiences, very much simplify the terms, as we said before. If I would talk to non-Jews, I would definitely invite them to learn more about Zionism. And even in my country, do you know when they interview me and I say I'm a Zionist, how much hate I still get? Because psychologically, Zionism is a negative term. Especially when I say it Hungarian, Zionist, it has such a negative term. And you need to explain to them that the Zionist endeavor is nothing more or less than what we did in 1848 or in 1956 as Hungarians. So if you translate it to the culture of that person that you are talking to, that also helps. So if you talk with an Italian or something, you need to have those parallelism that helps the other person understand what Zionism means in his term or her term. I think oftentimes we assume that the other party knows as much as we know,
Right.
and that's not true. And in the whole Palestinian vis-a-vis Israel, the first mistake we did is that we allowed that people believe that there was a Palestine. Now the Palestinians were kicked out. I mean, if you are so ignorant like I was, this is the 1 + 1, no? There was a Palestine, no, there is the Palestinians kicked out of Palestine. You need to understand that it was not like that. And the moment we can start with the basics, then I think we can build up. And change won't happen overnight. It takes effort, but it's possible because I could change, so everyone can change.
So I love your message. I love who you are because you have done something, which is, I tell people that if you empower people enough just to want to learn more, we win. Mm-hmm. And I know that you are out there today, tomorrow, in the past, and here on the show. You're empowering people to say, let me learn a little bit more. And once they do, that education then starts happening. So I'm glad you gave up the ballet shoes for the microphone.
Thank you.
But I think that the discipline shows who you are as a human being. And I thank you for being part of the Zionist movement, the love of Israel, and the Jewish National Fund family.
Thank you very much. Toda rabba.